Fighting Blindness Canada's Viewpoint is an education series that brings you the latest in vision research presented by health experts from across Canada. The session you're about to watch is a recording. To learn more about the research we fund and upcoming programs and events, please visit our website at fightingblindness.ca. Viewpoint is proudly presented by Bayer and supported by Abbvie, Apellis, Astellas, Beacon Therapeutics, Biogen, Johnson & Johnson, Novartis, and Roche. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoy this session and share your thoughts with us in the comment section below.
All right, everyone, we're going to get started with our final session of the day. I hope everyone is having a wonderful time. This has been such a great experience, meeting with all of you and hearing all these fantastic sessions and questions. So what we're doing up here, we're going to have something a little bit different. We're going to be talking to three individuals who live with vision loss about their experiences around advocacy. And I have a wonderful group up here that I'm so excited to be able to chat to. Immediately to my left, I have Mary Campbell, who is a retired nurse who lives here in Toronto. And next to her is Dave Brown, who's a host of a TV show. And then on the my far left is Alicia Chenier, who is our Young Leaders, one of our wonderful Young Leaders co-chairs this year. And she is an actress, a motivational speaker, and advocate. So join me in welcoming our wonderful panelists today. So I'd love to start out talking to each of you a little bit about, a very brief personal history about your experience with vision loss, just to set the stage for how you got involved in being an advocate. So Mary, why don't we start with you, and can you tell us just a little bit about your personal experience and journey with vision loss?
Thank you, Morgan. Can you hear me? There we go. Sorry, I'm not used to doing this public speaking with a mic. I was diagnosed with dry AMD when I was 64. That was in 2011. And then that progressed to wet AMD. I had a terrible experience with my diagnosis with wet AMD in that I had to wait 8 weeks to see a retinal specialist. And so by the time I got to see the retinal specialist and I started injections, the damage had been done and it was really hard to reverse my vision, my central vision. So I basically lost my central vision in my left eye. So 4 or 5 years later, I got the wet macular degeneration in my right eye. And at that time, I had gone to a different retinal specialist and he detected it on a routine visit and started injections. And so far today, I have good vision in my right eye. I can drive my car, live independently. I can read and whatnot. I've also got glaucoma in both eyes that was diagnosed after I got wet AMD. And I've also got cataracts in both eyes, and eventually will have to have surgery. But I am just very grateful to research for the wonderful medication that is preserving the vision in my right eye. So I'm so glad of organizations like Fighting Blindness Canada that funds research to help preserve vision.
Thank you, Mary. Dave, what about you? Can you share briefly your personal journey?
My case is a little bit different. I was born legally blind. I have albinism, which affects melanin and pigmentation in my skin, but also causes issues with my eyes, extreme light sensitivity, which can create some variance in what I can and can't see, or how well I can see, depending how bright it is. That's why I've got my sunglasses on stage right now. I've got about 8 to 10% vision on any given day. It's tough to define what that is, but it constitutes legally blind. But in my case, I've been adapting since the day I was born and continue to adapt to this day. And thankfully, my vision has remained stable throughout my life. But I'm also grateful to be here today, and it's humbling to be up here talking to you after so many great researchers and scientists and people who've worked with the organization were presenting. I'm just some guy who talks on a TV show every day, kind of a jabroni. So I appreciate you guys taking a little time for me.
Amazing. And Alicia, you have a bit of a different experience too. Why don't you share about that?
So I, at the age of 6 months old, my mom had discovered that I had vision loss caused by optic atrophy, which was later found out to be a brain tumor that was wrapped around my optic nerve. So I have no vision in my left eye, and I have tunnel vision in my right eye, so that no peripheral, no depth, and it's like looking through a toilet paper roll. Yeah.
So, the theme of our panel today is to talk about advocacy, and I know, I've worked and talked to all of you about this before, but I wondered what sort of prompted you to really become an advocate for the vision loss community, and are there sort of a specific moment or situation that really spurred that on? Alicia, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, for me, my advocacy journey started at a very young age, whether that be my mom fighting for, or, advocating for my rights, or me advocating for other rights. But I would say that because of society and because of growing up without representation of what blindness was in the world and on TV. You would often see people on TV like just staring into space who are acting blind, not blinking, and in the opposite of direction to the person they're talking to. And to me, that really was like the starting point of, there's not a lot of blind people in this media and film. So I really wanted to start taking an approach to that, being told constantly I couldn't work in the film industry, and now I'm an actor and starting out in that, I lost my train of thought there, but I guess really what pushed me was bringing authentic representation to film and media so that children nowadays can see themselves represented and they can feel inspired and motivated to do whatever they want.
I love that. That's so important. And there was a recent milestone with the release of Blind Barbie that we talked a lot about. I know that was really exciting for you.
Yes, Blind Barbie. I'm so, this just the campaign, I never played with Barbies as a kid because, again, I never seen myself represented. And I bought this thing and I brought it home, and my mom was like, I wish that was a thing for you when you were little, because maybe you actually would have picked up your white cane.
Barbie is a positive influence on the white cane. I love that. Dave, what about you? Sort of tell us about your advocacy journey. Anything that really prompted it?
It's a very interesting question, and I've got a similar-ish answer to Alicia, but it came to me a little bit later in life. I was really lucky in my life that even when I was running into obstacles or barriers, maybe I just didn't observe them as obstacles or barriers because I was someone who was very adaptable and laid back and chilled out. But to tell a personal story, my sister, who does not have a disability, probably is more connected to the community than even me. She works in spec ed, and she's been working with kids with disabilities for a long, long time. She's made that her life's passion. So much of my disability journey was very inward looking. It was very just my experiences. And when I left the CBC in 2014, during my last on-air hit on the radio show, I said, I'm going to a company called AMI. It's a company that represents people with disabilities. I'm a person with a disability, and this is one of the reasons why I'm going there, to go be a person who's front and center, an ambassador for that organization. And my sister called me later that day, and she said, David, you did something. I let her call me David. She's one of the few people in this world. She goes, David, there's something you did today, and I don't know if you noticed that you did it, but you self-identified for the first time on that show that you've been on for 3.5 years. And you did it so straightforwardly, but without necessarily pomp and circumstance. And she said, I don't think you understand what that might mean for a person with a disability in the city of Ottawa to have heard that, to know that even though you weren't necessarily forward about it in your time working on the show or working on the station, that's now this kernel that's going to be in their mind. And it's a reminder to me that sometimes when you're advocating, you don't even know that you're advocating, because what you're doing with your actions represents something bigger. Morgan, I know I probably went for a little meander there. I apologize.
No, I think that's absolutely beautiful, and I think it goes back to, you know, what Alicia and you were saying too, like growing up not having that representation, like hearing that as someone with a disability out on the airwaves, hearing you say that, the impact, like it ripples, right? It's like throwing a stone into a pond. There's so many people that are then going to hear that and feel that on a deep level.
Well, one of the core components of advocacy is you're standing on the shoulders of giants that came before you, right? Every battle that an advocate fought and ideally won before you got there is what allows you to take the next step in the journey, whether it be your journey as an individual or the journey of the community more broadly.
Absolutely. Mary, I'd love to hear from you now. Can you talk a little bit about what sort of spurred you on to speak out, to be an advocate? I know you were on our podcast. You've done speaking about your experience for others. What can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, Morgan. What I found when I was first diagnosed with my wet macular degeneration was that I didn't know anybody who'd ever had that. I was totally alone, and I really didn't have anybody to talk to. And I was like that, and I don't know why, but I didn't look it up on the internet. My ophthalmology specialist never gave me any literature, no handouts, did not suggest any kind of website. There was no communication at all about what this disease was. And it was only meeting one of my neighbors down the street, probably a couple of years later, who told me about Fighting Blindness Canada. And she had someone who was a friend who was working at the organization. So I called up and I heard about their events, and I came to one of the first events, and I found like a room like this with all these people. And all the materials, the drug reps that were there, the assistive devices, and all this material, and I was just like a sponge picking all this stuff up. And so one of my biggest areas of interest is education. We just don't know enough about this disease, and they're so hard to get information. I have changed retinal specialists, but the retinal specialist I go to now, there is not one piece of literature in his office. And there are 6 retinal specialists there, and we're all getting eye injections the days I go. And so I say yes when I'm asked to speak. I'm working with part of a panel, of a patient education panel, where it's with the drug company that wants to put out education materials. We told them on this panel, one of the biggest issues is that we're not getting education about what, especially wet AMD and dry AMD. There's diabetes, retinopathy. There's just so many eye diseases. So I'm helping to develop patient education materials. I'm also a supporter of Fighting Blindness Canada. I believe in the work that they do and the research they're funding. I've got 3 kids. One of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, they're all at risk for inheriting what I have. And if there's anything I can do to help support research, that maybe there'll be better treatments if one of them contacts AMD later on, I'm grateful.
Thanks, Mary. I'd like to ask each of you to share potentially a story or a specific instance where your personal experiences have led to advocacy and maybe a positive outcome, maybe not a positive outcome, but what did that journey look like for you? Alicia, maybe I'll pop back to you to start us off.
Yeah, I have it's happened in the last few years, but so I was in college, everyone knows me as the resident blind girl, if you will. So I was walking around and I had my pink cane and going from a class to another class, and there was a new student at the class. Semester had just started, so there was new students. This one person decided that it would be comical to, while I'm using my white cane and actively navigating the world, to jump back and forth over it like it was a skip-it toy. And they were actively laughing, and that was a point in my life where I felt like my independence had been not only like in danger for me, but for that other person. Because I didn't, they could have like accidentally tripped on it, and then that would have started a whole thing. And so to combat this, it took me a few years, but I have started, writing screenplays and all of that. And so I basically wrote up this story with this clown character, if you will, just to make it comical, of like the clown doing the same thing, and like me, like the character being in a carnival full of different discriminations that we face daily as blind people, and just making it comical in a way that people will it gets the point across. Because if you see a clown, it's ridiculous. And so the fact that that happened in my life is very redundant, but it's a way to change the narrative and bring it back on them to basically, if they see it, it's just like something like, maybe I should have rethought that and not jump back and forth over a white cane.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly,
I used it in my I combat it in my writing.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I think that's horrible. But I really respond positively to you saying you've taken this like really negative thing that's happened to you, and how you've not only turned it into something positive, but something that can educate other people about why that is totally inappropriate. Dave, what about you?
Well, when it comes to advocacy, you have to be able to protect yourself from time to time, and you have to be able to triage these things. What's the small, what's the medium, what's the large? And when it comes to the large advocacy battles, progress is typically so incremental and oftentimes not linear that it's hard to even reflect on a singular story. But I want to talk about approach, because kindness goes a long way, as does positive reinforcement. Something I've started doing in the last couple of years is when people do things that I appreciate from the perspective of my disability, sending me an email in a large font, for example. I don't demand it of people, but when they do, I will always write back, thank you for putting that in a large font. Thank you for making my life easier when I'm traveling with friends, family, colleagues, when they do some of the little things to lend me a hand, perhaps giving me a bit of guidance around the airport without me having to ask for it, or pointing out a couple of things that I might find notable that they realize that I can't see. I thank them for it. So Morgan, I know that I'm taking a bit of a different twist on your question, but it's because I think as this conversation gets going and elaborates, I think we'll all be able to express some frustrations about massive barriers, but being able to address positive behavior is also a really great way to advocate, because people love it when you say kind things to them.
Absolutely. I think that's a great perspective, and you're right. We often focus a lot on sort of the negative side of things, so I think it's really important that we think about how we can address some of these things from the other side, right? Kindness is free. We can be kind. Mary, how about yourself?
Well, my advocacy probably starts, first of all, with myself. I think when the first retinal specialist I went to, when I didn't know anything about AMD, I asked very little questions. I didn't know much about it. But then I started to, I sang in a choir, and I met a couple of women who were singing in the choir, and I found out what their clinical experience was like when they went to get their eye injections. And I found out that the doctor I was seeing wasn't even checking my good eye. And I thought, so I asked him when I went the next appointment, what happens if I get vision loss in my good eye? And he said, well, you'll have to make an appointment and see your optometrist and get another referral. And I thought, I've already lost the vision in my central eye for waiting 8 weeks. I can't afford to lose the vision in my good eye. So I went to my friends at the choir and I said, tell me who your optometrist is. I got to change. And so that changed. I went to finally got to see a new retinal specialist who did all the right things, checking my good vision, my good eye, every visit I went. and he's the one that picked up my glaucoma because he did a glaucoma test. And so, and recently I was told that the next interval for my eye injection was 10 weeks. They gave me the date, and I got home and I counted up the weeks, and I thought, that's 10 weeks. I get my injections every 7 to 8 weeks. I'm not comfortable waiting 10 weeks. What if I get a bleed in those later weeks? So I called up the clinic, and I asked, and insisted that I get in earlier and rebook the appointment. And I would not have done that for myself when I first started. And so, and knowing more about the eye disease as I become better educated, it helps me be more of an advocate. And I've met people at places like this, at Viewpoint, where it's maybe more one-on-one advocacy, where we may be connected by phone or we meet for coffee. They've got a different, AMD, and they might have dry AMD as well, but we get together and chat and compare notes, and you get ideas of resources. So I do kind of advocacy, that way.
I love that, Mary, and I mean, obviously you're preaching to the choir on the information leads to advocacy thing. I mean, that is what we try to do with every Viewpoint, and having everyone in the room today is that in order for you to advocate for yourself, you need to have information, and accurate information, relevant, timely information. And so, getting connected to other people here, and we're gonna have a social hour after this session. Hopefully you can meet some new people and connect that way, which I think is so important to that journey and being more confident to advocate for yourself. So I'd like to talk about maybe some common misconceptions about vision loss, or maybe some of those barriers that Dave alluded to. And so how have you addressed those through advocacy? So maybe Dave, I'll start with you this time.
The misconceptions are endless. We'll be here through the end of the social hour if we just start listing them over and over and again. But what I will say, and it relates to what you just said, Morgan, it's actually being able to be honest with people. If people are asking you questions, and providing they're not being total jerks about it, and providing they're not potentially upending an event or something, or a social event or a dinner party just to be badgering you with questions, I've actually reached the point now where I'm kind of letting people ask me anything they want, if only to counter the misconceptions, because I'd rather be a conduit of information rather than get snippy with people. But I also want to re-acknowledge that when you've had the same question asked to you 15 or 20 times in maybe even a day, you're perhaps going to lose a little bit of patience. But I know there's a few folks here who have guide dogs today, and that's one of those really tricky ones. People still don't understand guide dog etiquette. They just don't. I had a colleague who had one, and she was perpetually being bombarded to teach people about guide dog etiquette. And she was exhausted. It exhausted her. It was brutal. So when I was talking about the big, medium, and small earlier, sometimes you do have to be able to say, okay, you're not going to be the kind information conduit. Sometimes you've got to be a little bit in people's faces.
Yeah, I think that's great. That goes back to so many things you said. Like, one, it's a pick your battles situation, right? And as much as we try to be kind and understanding, it is exhausting to constantly have to answer those questions. So we're all human, right? At some point, it's just, I'm reminded of that show. I don't know how many people have seen it. I think, what's it called? You Can't Ask That. Has anyone seen that show? It's a show that people with disabilities and chronic health issues are on, and they talk about some of the most outrageous questions that people have asked them. And it's really, I mean, it's meant to be kind of funny and lighthearted, but it's also really illuminating to some of the weird things that people are asking and bringing up. And I'm sure everyone on stage has had.
And you can find that at amiplus.ca, amiplus.ca.
I was going to say it, and then I was like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. But yes, AMI for sure. It's a great watch. Alicia, how about yourself? What are some of the common misconceptions that you've encountered, and how do you face those?
I'm about to rile up everyone.
Uh-oh.
Blindness is nothing, and blindness is just like all or nothing. many times I will go out with my white cane, who, by the way, if you have not heard his name is Seymour, because he sees more than me. So I will go out with my white cane and navigating, just minding my own business, and someone was like, wait, you're blind? And then I'm like, yes, I am. And I'm like looking at them, you know, directing conversation, and they're like, but you're looking at me. And then that just starts an entire conversation, because they're like, no, obviously you're not blind because you can still see me. And when in reality only I think it's 90% of people with vision loss have some degree of vision. And so that, like, because, you know, in TV, again, I'm going to bring it back to TV, every time you see a blind person, pretty much, it's played by someone who has no experience with blindness, and they are just staring into the abyss of nothing at a wall. And so it's always, I guess, depending on the day, again, depending on how you want to treat the situation, sometimes I'm like, well, I can, I'll explain it, and some other times I'll be like, someone's like, wait, you have vision? Like, someone will be like, wait, you're blind? And I'm like, wait, you have vision? And do a 180 on that. But it's a hard one to navigate. And it's one of those things where, oftentimes I will take the time to explain it to them. But I think blindness is such a huge concept for people to even understand, just grasp, that, like, it's, because I've even had questions, like, they're like, so you're blind in your left eye, but is it just, like, do you see black? I'm like, no, I see nothing. And even that, bleeding blind, like, it's, yeah.
So in addition to educating ourselves, there's obviously a lot of public education that still needs to take place. Mary, how about you? Any misconceptions that you have dealt with?
Well, starting with my family and friends, they all want to know, well, what's it like when you've lost your central vision? What does that mean? So yeah, I have to, tell about, cover one eye, and so explain that. And I also, when I go anywhere where there are stairs, or pretty well anything, I cannot tell depth perception with having lost the central vision in one eye and having good vision in my other eye. So I appreciate so much, like using the TTC, where they've got the stairs marked in the yellow strips. I mean, the people that, were behind putting those in, that is just so helpful to people with, vision loss and depth perception, to see that color there to help you see the steps and be safe. So I have to tell friends when I'm going places, when somewhere I haven't been and there's steps, like, hold on to their hand, or just say, look, I'm slower at going down the stairs or going down here because I have a hard time telling depth perception. And one of the funny things is when I drive my car, and I generally don't I don't carpool anymore. I drive myself to familiar areas around the city that I'm comfortable driving. But when I go to park, if I'm in underground parking, for instance, I think I've pulled up really close to the wall, and I get out of the car and I'm 6 to 10 feet away. I can't tell distance that way. But like starting with my own kids, to have to tell them what I can see, what I can't see. So anyhow, it's basically just educating folks.
Absolutely. Well, time is speeding by, so I want to pose my final question, and then hopefully we'll have time for one or two from the audience. So I'd like to talk about strategies. So what strategies have you found to be most effective in amplifying your voice and the voices of others over issues that require some advocacy? How about we start with Dave this time?
It's a couple of different things. It's understanding what you're advocating for and who you're advocating for. Some advocacies are going to be very personal because it's about something that so deeply impacts you as an individual. Sometimes the advocacies are going to be on behalf of other people, and maybe you're even an ally for somebody else's advocacy that might be something a bit bigger and broader. Know what you're advocating for because the difference between advocating and complaining is that advocacy comes with a solution. You have to be solutions focused, because if you're not giving the people in power or the decision maker or the party that has aggrieved you an actual option, then you are just complaining.
Yeah, that reminds me of something. One of our young leaders who's in the room, Ben Okwako, we've had this conversation before, and I remember once having a conversation with him and him saying to me that in order to really be, I'm sorry, Ben, if I'm misquoting you, but really powerful advocate, you have to in some ways take the emotion out of it. You have to be fact-driven. You have to have those solutions, because that's how you're going to get your message across, is by providing that sort of information. Alicia, how about yourself?
I think really, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just talking about sort of what strategies that you found like to help amplify your voice and the voices of others in your advocacy work.
I think it really stems in society and changing society's view of disability from sympathy to empathy, and getting to that root cause of, okay, where did you learn these stereotypes and these stigmas, and how can we combat that for change? Many of us grew up on the medical model of disability, which that's a whole thing of getting into, like, you know, so I'm not going to go into it now, but we really need to move into a like place in life where we're at like a disability justice like lens, and really, you know, embracing disability and everything that it comes with it, because it's very like in your life, like in everyone's lifetime, they will experience some sort of disability eventually. And it's just getting comfortable with even just saying the word disability. The amount of times, like I was called hard of seeing the other day.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, what does that even mean? So, you know, dealing with stuff like that, or partially sighted, where I'm like, what is that? And they're like, oh, but you still have a little bit of vision, so it's positive. And I'm like, okay, no one understands visually impaired as is. So just getting down to that root cause and retraining society.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's so many places that we can also, like, you know, we talk about these models, like medical model, social model, but there's a way that all of those things can come together, right? And that, again, like what we try to do here is like have that holistic approach, because all of these things are important to people, and it's about thinking about the future, but also thinking about what's happening right now, what's happening today, and how can we like support each other right now. Yeah. Mary, how about yourself? Strategies for amplifying our voices.
I think for me, my pet project, as I've already mentioned, is education. So I say yes to opportunities where I'm asked, if Morgan's asked me, or to volunteer to do something, to help out, to share my story, to participate in helping with education materials, anything like that. I'm all in and want to do that, and that's how, for right now, because I still have vision, that's where my advocacy is going, is in that direction.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mary. So I have more questions. I could sit up here all day and chat with these folks, but I want to see if any of you have questions. We have a couple of people, I think, who have mics, who can come around. I see someone at the front. Larissa's coming to you, and if you have any questions, or if there's any questions on our live stream, definitely let us know.
Hello, my name is Joseph Sideros. I want to know, how can you deal with burnt out from advocacy, because you can feel exhausted. So how can you deal with burnout when you have to advocate all the time? How can you manage that?
What a great question. Anyone takers? Alicia, you want to start off?
Yeah, so burnout, especially like 'cause I work in advocacy when I'm not doing all the other fun things. And I think it's pivotal for you to learn how to navigate a healthy advocacy, not advocacy life balance. And really, so you do, you have like your times where you're advocating and all that, But for me, I have found spaces in society or in life where I can go, I can just be myself, and I don't have to advocate. I don't have to be sighted Alicia. I can be blind Alicia in those moments where I don't have to put on an act and advocate for my rights. So for me, it's in theater. So I go and hobbies are a big thing too. Don't spend your, you can advocate, but you take that time to do hobbies that you love and find that community that you love, because I think at the end of the day, community helps the burnout.
Dave, do you want to add something?
So beyond picking your battles and triaging, which I know sounds really flippant because so many times advocacy is about something that's truly important, one of the things you have to accept that will probably help you with burnout is that you're not always going to win. Even if you're morally and ethically completely correct, the wheels of society turn slowly. And I'm not saying that means give up. It means that some days you're just not going to put the pedal to the metal.
Mary, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't have any. I'm not doing as much advocacy as these others two are, so I don't have any burnout issues.
Any other questions out there or online? Oh, there's someone over there. Oh, yeah, perfect. In the back.
Yeah, I've always wondered, floor numbers on elevators, apartment numbers in Braille, audible buttons at crossing intersections. Does anybody with a visual impairment actually use those things? And the other part to that question is there anything you can do to advocate for the urban planners to make those things better accessible?
So it was a little bit soft, but I think it was asking about Braille and tactile elements in elevators, if that's something that is typically used, and how can we advocate to the people who design our physical spaces, urban planners, to make our environment more accessible.
I'm not a Braille reader or Braille user, so I can't answer all of your question about who uses what, but the audible crossing signals, oh heck yeah. Not just blind people use those, a lot of people use those. That is an awesome piece of universal urban design. Mary was just talking about the yellow strips on the stairs at the subway stations. Amazing piece of urban design, creating contrasts and distinctions. I'm going to take a swipe at Toronto here. The way the subway system laid out is horrifically bad because you never know where the eastbound train is going or where the westbound train is going. And if you could please have an audio announcement as the train is pulling up, here comes the eastbound or westbound or northbound train coming. There's about a bazillion things that urban planners could do. And if you want to come say hi to me when this is over, I will happily give you my contact info because I have about 20,000 ideas.
Alicia, because you've done some work with the city and stuff, right, through your advocacy work. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I can share a little experience. So I live in Sudbury, and it's not as advanced as Toronto is. I come here and I'm like, oh my God, there's escalators. So, and for me, I use city transit, as I'm sure many of us do. And back in 2018, in Sudbury, they decided to change the entire bus thing up. So it was different colors for different routes of bus signs on a white background. Well, you think I knew where to find the bus? I didn't know what color I was looking for on what day and what time, and they're white. So in the winter, I was out of luck with all the snow that we get. So that for many, I was fighting, I basically had lost my independence there. And so in October of 2022 or 3, I want to say, I went and I went to the city office and I was like, hey, we need to make a change with this. It's not accessible for people with vision loss. And so it was a long process to work with them and have consultations with CNIB as well. And other blind people within our Sudbury. But we were able to actually get and implement signs that were 6 inches bigger and 4 inches thicker in a contrasting color that's standard across the board. And it even has a QR code on it, and the words are enlarged so that it's easier for people to find the bus stops and more accessible, because with vision loss you can there's a QR code on it, so you scan that with your phone and it gives you in live time of where that bus is and when it's coming.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Alicia.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really great. So I can hear our glass doors are being opened, which means it is almost time for our social hour. So we're going to wrap up there, but I want to thank Mary and Dave and Alicia. Thank you so much for being here. That was wonderful.
Pleasure.
Thank
you.